This is Twit.
Meg has been bopping around to various robotics and intelligent systems fora, including We Robot in Florida, and just recently a Microsoft talk on, it's the Microsoft Innovation and Policy Center Robotics and Intelligence Systems forum, whatever it was. It sounds like some interesting stuff. We've already, heard about Meg's taser drone. So let's find out.
Yeah.
Can you give us your take both from We Robot and the Microsoft event? It looks like one of the topics you've been investigating is parole boards using algorithms and intelligent systems to evaluate prisoners.
So I have not investigated that as much as I want to. I think it's fascinating. I was looking at that in terms of big data and government's use of computational systems and how we sort of legitimize these things that we're still trying to regulate, but still using at the same time. But the parole board, I think, use is really fascinating. And I think we're going to see more and more of it. So there's just a handful of parole boards that use them now. So I'm very intrigued. I would love to know how they work. I would love to reverse engineer those analytical tools that you're using.
Do you at least know what kinds of information they're looking at? Are they looking at information from before the time the inmate was incarcerated, or behaviors while they're incarcerated, or both? Or do you have any insight at all on that?
So my only insight, I have been trying to get more information on this. My only insight is that it is a big data analytics tool. So I'm sure that parole boards were hopefully using some kind of systematic approach, right, where they would take the data of the individual and consider it and weigh it in hopefully a fair and consistent way. But now we're talking about big data. So we're looking at how other inmates adhere to the law when they are released, which can have major social, racial, gender ramifications for differences in how inmates are released. I don't know exactly what type of data is being used from the individual themselves. But it is, when we talk about a big data analytics tool, we're talking about, massive predictions based on a massive amount of prior data. And a lot of times that data is not very good. And it's based on releases that could have been unfair to begin with. So I think that there might be some really interesting problems. But one of the biggest things I always have to remind myself with robots and intelligent systems is you always have to compare it to better than what. So maybe the analytics are super scary and terrible, but are they better than, the human boards that are doing this now? Is it still somehow better, even though it might be bad and scary?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you think folks might be interested in that they haven't, stumbled across from We Robot?
We Robot was so interesting. It's still a lot of issue spotting, and we would love for more people to be invested in this area. A really great paper that was presented this year had to do with access to education. So we've seen a few news stories about students who have used a telecommunications robot to attend school when they have some kind of disability, and whether that could become a right that students can invoke to get access to information. And so you could, that's like an actual robot, with a little tutu. For this girl is the one I'm thinking of. So you can imagine assistive sort of cyborg where they could also be provided, which causes all kinds of concerns when you put them in a classroom or in an education setting, but that education law is not necessarily prepared to handle. I thought that was a great conversation that I hadn't considered before. There's some great stuff on drones, of course, drones and the First Amendment. So whether the press has a right to fly drones anywhere that they want because they have a First Amendment right to record. That's Margot Kaminsky's project. And there was a great paper outlining sort of a first draft of an outline of robot ethics, a real one. So not the 3 laws, and it's very long, actually. We needed more than 3, apparently, if you wanted to put them into actual practice.
Right.
I'm really taking a critical eye to, you're talking about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, right?
Right.
I'm really taking a critical eye to that based on some things that James Barrett has said. He was on the show a couple of months ago, and he was on an episode of Triangulation here on the Twit Network. He wrote, Denise, what's the title of the book? Our Final Invention, right?
Our Last Invention, I believe it's called.
It's a sinister viewed, not pessimistic, I would say realistic and thoughtful view of the future of artificial intelligence and robotics. And he just totally discredits the applicability of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, pointing out, oh, by the way, these were, introduced in a fictional work to, right. play into the plot. So I'm just saying it. I'm really giving a critical taking a critical perspective on how applicable Asimov's 3 laws are in any of these discussions, because James Barrett, who's infinitely more smarter than I am on these issues, says it. So I'll just do what he says in all this. But it does make sense, the reason that he gives, that it doesn't take into account the real nuances of the issues in real life, but it does work well as a fictional device.
Yes.